Hello, and thank you for joining us for tonight's story. We are continuing the story of How Much Land Does a Man Need, written by Leo Tolstoy. Tonight we're reading parts 4, 5, and 6. If you haven't heard parts 1, 2, and 3, I'm going to put a link about there. You can click that link and listen to parts 1, 2, and 3. Part 4. As soon as Pahom and his family arrived at their new abode, he applied for admission into the commune of a large village. He stood treat to the elders, and obtained the necessary documents. 5 shares of communal land were given him for his own and his son's use, that is to say, 125 acres, not altogether, but in different fields, besides the use of the communal pasture. Pahom put up the buildings he needed, and bought cattle. Of the communal land alone he had 3 times as much as at his former home, and the land was good corn land. He was 10 times better off than he had been. He had plenty of arable land and pasturage, and could keep as many head of cattle as he liked. At first, in the bustle of building and settling down, Pahom was pleased with it all, but when he got used to it, he began to think that even here he had not enough land. The first year he sowed wheat on his share of the communal land, and had a good crop. He wanted to go on sowing wheat, but had not enough communal land for the purpose, and what he had already used was not available, for in those parts wheat is only sown on virgin soil or on fallow land. It is sown for 1 or 2 years, and when the land lies fallow, till it is again overgrown with prairie grass. There were many who wanted such land, and there was not enough for all, so that people quarreled about it. Those who were better off wanted it for growing wheat, and those who were poor wanted it to let to dealers, so that they might raise money to pay their taxes. Pahom wanted to sow more wheat, so he rented land from a dealer for a year. He sowed much wheat and had a fine crop, but the land was too far from the village. The wheat had to be carted more than 10 miles. After a time, Pahom noticed that some peasant dealers were living on separate farms and were growing wealthy, and he thought, if I were to buy some freehold land and have a homestead on it, it would be a different thing altogether. I'm going to reread that part. If I were to buy some freehold land and have a homestead on it, it would be a different thing altogether. Then it would all be nice and compact. The question of buying freehold land had recurred to him again and again. He went on in the same way for 3 years, renting land and sowing wheat. The seasons turned out well, and the crops were good, so that he began to lay money by. He might have gone on living contentedly, but he grew tired of having to rent other people's land every year, and having to scramble for it. Wherever there was good land to be had, the peasants would rush for it, and it was taken up at once, so that unless you were sharp about it, you got none. It happened in the 3rd year that he and a dealer together rented a piece of pasture land from some peasants, and they had already plowed it up when there was some dispute, and the peasants went to law about it, and things fell out so that the labor was all lost. If it were my own land, thought Pahom, I should be independent, and there would not be all this unpleasantness. So Pahom began looking out for land which he could buy, and he came across a peasant who had bought 1,300 acres, but having got into difficulties, was willing to sell it again cheap. Pahom bargained and haggled with him, and at last they settled the price at 1,500 rubles, part in cash and part to be paid later. They had all but clinched the matter, when a passing dealer happened to stop at Pahom's one day to get a feed for his horse. He drank tea with Pahom, and they had a talk. The dealer said that he was just returning from the land of the Bashkirs, far away, where he had bought 13,000 acres of land, all for 1,000 rubles. Pahom questioned him further, and the tradesman said, All one need do is to make friends with the chiefs. I gave away about 100 rubles worth of dressing gowns and carpets, besides a case of tea, and I gave wine to those who would drink it, and I got the land for less than 2 pence an acre." And he showed Pahom the title deeds, saying, "The land lies near a river, and the whole prairie is virgin soil." Pahom plied him with questions, and the tradesman said, "There is more land there than you could cover if you walked a year, and it all belongs to the Bashkirs. They are as simple as sheep, and land can be got almost for nothing." "There now," thought Pahom, "with my 1,000 rubles, why should I get only 1,300 acres, and settle myself with a debt besides? If I take it out there, I can get more than 10 times as much for the money." Pahom inquired how to get to the place. This is part 5. Part 5. Pahom inquired how to get to the place, and as soon as the tradesman had left him, he prepared to go there himself. He left his wife to look after the homestead, and started on his journey, taking his man with him. They stopped at a town on their way, and bought a case of tea, some wine, and other presents, as the tradesman had advised. On and on they went, until they had gone more than 300 miles, and on the 7th day they came to a place where the Bashkirs had pitched their tents. It was all just as the tradesman had said. The people lived on the steppes by a river, in felt-covered tents. They neither tilled the ground nor ate bread. Their cattle and horses grazed in herds on the steppe. The colts were tethered behind the tents, and the mares were driven to them twice a day. The mares were milked, and from the milk kumis was made. It was the women who prepared kumis, and they also made cheese. As far as the men were concerned, drinking kumis and tea, eating mutton, and playing on their pipes was all they cared about. They were all stout and merry, and all the summer long they never thought of doing any work. They were quite ignorant, and knew no Russian, but were good-natured enough. As soon as they saw Pahom, they came out of their tents, and gathered round their visitor. An interpreter was found, and Pahom told them he had come about some land. The Bashkirs seemed very glad. They took Pahom and led him into one of the best tents, where they made him sit on some down cushions placed on a carpet, while they sat around him. They gave him tea and kumis, and had a sheep killed, and gave him mutton to eat. Pahom took presents out of his cart, and distributed them among the Bashkirs, and divided amongst them the tea. The Bashkirs were delighted. They talked a great deal among themselves, and then told the interpreter to translate. "They wish to tell you," said the interpreter, "that they like you, and that it is our custom to do all we can to please a guest, and to repay him for his gifts. You have given us presents. Now tell us which of the things we possess please you best, that we may present them to you." "What pleases me best here," answered Pahom, "is your land. Our land is crowded, and the soil is exhausted, but you have plenty of land, and it is good land. I never saw the like of it." The interpreter translated. The Bashkirs talked among themselves for a while. Pahom could not understand what they were saying, but saw that they were much amused, and that they shouted and laughed. Then they were silent and looked at Pahom, while the interpreter said, "They wish me to tell you that in return for your presents they will gladly give you as much land as you want. You have only to point it out with your hand, and it is yours." The Bashkirs talked again for a while, and began to dispute. Pahom asked what they were disputing about, and the interpreter told him that some of them thought they ought to ask their chief about the land, and not act in his absence, while others thought there was no need to wait for his return. Part 6. While the Bashkirs were disputing, a man in a large fox fur cap appeared on the scene. They all became silent, and and rose to their feet. The interpreter said, "This is our chief himself." Pahom immediately fetched the best dressing-gown and 5 pounds of tea, and offered these to the chief. The chief accepted them, and seated himself in the place of honor. The Bashkirs at once began telling him something. The chief listened for a while, then made a sign with his head for them to be silent, and addressing himself to Pahom, said in Russian, "Well, let it be so. Choose whatever piece of land you like. We have plenty of it." "How can I take as much as I like?" thought Pahom. "I must get a deed to make it secure, or else they may say it is yours, and after may take it away again." "Thank you for your kind words," he said aloud. "You have much land, and I only want a little, but I should like to be sure which bit is mine. Could it not be measured and made over to me? Life and death are in God's hands. You good people give it to me, but your children might wish to take it away again." "You are quite right," said the chief. "We will make it over to you." "I heard that a dealer had been here," continued Pahom, "and that you gave him a little land too, and signed title deeds to that effect. I should like to have it done in the same way." The chief understood. "Yes," replied he, "that can be done quite easily. We have a scribe, and we will go to town with you and have the deed properly sealed." "And what will be the price?" asked Pahom. "Our price is always the same. 1,000 rubles a day." Pahom did not understand. "A day? What measure is that? How many acres would that be?" "We do not know how to reckon it out," said the chief. "We sell it by the day. As much as you can go around on your feet in a day is yours, and the price is 1,000 rubles a day." Pahom was surprised. "But in a day you can get round a large tract of land," he said. The chief laughed. "It will all be yours," said he, "but there is one condition. If you don't return on the same day to the spot whence you started, your money is lost." "But how am I to mark the way that I have gone?" "Why, we shall go to any spot you like, and stay there. You must start from that spot and make your round, taking a spade with you. Wherever you think necessary, make a mark. At every turning, dig a hole and pile up the turf. Then afterwards we will go round with the plough from hole to hole. You may make as large a circuit as you please, but before the sun sets you must return to the place you started from. All the land you cover will be yours." Pahom was delighted. It was decided to start early next morning. They talked a while, and after drinking some more kumiss and eating some more mutton, they had tea again, and then the night came on. They gave Pahom a feather bed to sleep on, and the Bashkirs dispersed for the night, promising to assemble the next morning at daybreak and ride out before sunrise to the appointed spot. That was the end of part 6 of How Much Land Does a Man Need by Leo Tolstoy. On the next reading, we will finish parts 7, 8, and 9. Thank you so much for listening. Good night, everybody.